Welcome to the Success Flow Podcast, where our mission is simple: to be better each day and relay our findings with other relentless humans defining success for themselves. If that sounds like you, let's begin. Today, we have a milestone with the first ever guest for the Success Flow Podcast, Ryan Corry. Now, Ryan is the Chief Philanthropy Officer at St. Vincent de Paul, Phoenix, but foremost, he's a friend, and I'm going to let him give his own introduction here in a second. But we've been friends for about 3 years now, and it feels like a lot longer than that. But in my network, there's quite a few people that have, an extensive network and are connected. But Ryan, for me, is the most intentionally well-connected individual I've ever met. And I mean that because he not only knows a number of people that he can call upon to help solve problems in the Valley, but he knows their why. He knows their families, and he knows what missions they're on, and is able to match those up to really solve some big problems. And he's extremely articulate and always trying to get better, which is what this podcast is all about. So there could not be a more fitting first guest for the podcast, Stephen. And I'm just pretty dang fired up. So
I agree, man.
How the heck are you, Ryan? How's your week starting?
After that introduction, how could a guy not have a great start to his week? That was pretty special, and grateful to be your guest and the first guest. And so, yeah, I mean, look, I'm like floating on cloud nine with people who think like that of me. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Ryan, I echo Phil's sentiments for you. We've known each other for about a year now, and Phil's the one that introduced us. And being well-connected is an understatement, and understanding people's whys is also an understatement. I was in a need for something, and he connected me with you, and you've now since connected me with, 4 or 5 other people in just the last 12 months here locally. And you're an incredible person. We're excited to have you on. So thank you for joining us. And you got to tell me, you just hiked the Grand Canyon. Do I understand that you did this again? You've done this before. That was recently.
Yeah. Yeah, I just did it 3 days ago. And the way I'm moving around will definitely tell you that my body went through something. And so, it's a pretty special experience. Yeah, I've done it 4 times total. It's a 18-mile walk with a 4,500, 4,600 foot elevation gain, and most of that is in the last 3 or 4 miles. And so it's kind of a brutal little journey uphill. But since you started with sort of being connected and relational, other than being in the beauty of nature and just experiencing that and just being in awe of that, the reason I do this is to do it with other people and to literally journey with them up the canyon. And we have different people come every year. Some of the same people put themselves through misery multiple times. And I mean, where else are you going to spend like 8 uninterrupted hours with someone? It's a pretty cool way to get to know people and just to accomplish something with them. And I think that's become a really special part of my year every year.
That's awesome.
This is typically a busy time for you, and we were excited that the Hail Mary worked out to get you on the podcast this week, given that we have Boondoggle coming up, which is the title of this podcast, and we're going to get to, which
why?
No one has any idea.
No one knows what that is. I hope you attract people just because it's a long, complicated word.
They're about to. It is a lot of syllables. With that being said, before we get into all that is Boondoggle and the chaos that ensues, can we get a little background on Ryan Corry and your story and the path to where you're at now with St. Vincent de Paul and kind of the background there?
I think a lot of it is just the relationships I've had and sort of a calling that was probably always part of my life that you sort of have to get beaten over the head with sometimes before you're like, oh yeah, that's always been there. So throughout most of my life, I wanted to be an attorney. I thought going into courtrooms like, Law and Order style or something and just winning everything was just a cool alpha ego thing that I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm after. And then when I'm 20, my best friend gets diagnosed with leukemia. And I remember it being one of the points in my life where I wasn't smart enough to fix something, and I certainly didn't have enough money to fix something. There is no fixing cancer, right? I just kind of was at a loss for what to do, and he was in Arizona, I was in California, and I just showed up at a small nonprofit and said, hey, put me to work. And their work was serving families who were going through a diagnosis of cancer. So I delivered Christmas presents, I licked envelopes, I helped plan events. Nothing was too menial for me to do to participate in that mission. And I think what I learned is you can have great leverage in serving big missions, right? Like if you put your talent and your relationships and your invitation out to other people, you can have incredible leverage solving huge community problems and even the small personal challenges. So as I look, and so I did that. I worked in nonprofit work, and my wife and we were sitting around and we're like, what do we want our life to be about? And as we're thinking through life experiences that made us who we are, one of mine is that when I was 10 years old, I was packing food boxes for St. Vincent de Paul. And one of my wife's is that when she became a teacher, she served a number of years in Title I schools, teaching, some of the community's kids who are most in need, most in poverty. And so we're thinking about this and we're like, pretty interesting that a job for St. Vincent de Paul pops up in our hometown. And so 10 years ago, we took it. We've been married 11 years. We got 3 kids. We bring our kids to St. Vincent de Paul. They love going and serving. And I think what makes it the most fun for me are these relationships that I get to develop. Relationships with the 2 of you guys, and with so many other people who we're all going to hang out with this weekend. The thing that connects us all actually is St. Vincent de Paul. There's yep. And it's not about St. Vincent de Paul, right? It's not about that, but amongst our relationships, that's the only thing we all have in common. And so I think using those big community things as relational leverage points is a special opportunity that I get to have.
That's awesome. And you mentioned a few times relationships and leverage, and it sounds like you defined your purpose, right? You and your wife are having the conversation is what do we want out of the rest of our lives, and we want that to look like, and being able to reflect on those pivotal moments you had as a kid and take action on those opportunities that came your way. And you've been instrumental not only for our community but for me personally, and to hear that story in that amount of depth was awesome. So thank you so much for sharing. I mean, as you know, when we were it was about a year ago, I think, we were looking to do a food drive, and this is when you and I had met for my company, Journey Payroll in Phoenix. And I said, I was talking to Phil about it, and he said, dude, you've got to meet Ryan Corry, St. Vincent de Paul. I was like, all right, I'm all ears, let's do it. We went, where'd we go? Fate Brewery, I think, in Phoenix. We had lunch. We had a beer, and the rest was history. We did a food drive, and I think you even came back to me and said we had one of the most successful first food drives in St. Vincent de Paul's history, which was huge. I mean, we looped in our clients and rallied the community and got people involved, and you make it so easy to do that. And I think that's the point of telling that story is you connect people well, you develop those relationships, and at the end of the day, what drives happiness in most people's eyes is that social interaction, those relationships, and the feel good and the doing good. So I appreciate you, brother. That was awesome. Thank you for sharing. Now, I have to say, after that food drive,
and thanks for that. That's special.
That just started with just a food drive, and then all of a sudden I get an invite to Boondoggle, and I'm like, what the heck is this? And Phil's like, you are going, don't Don't miss it. And now we got it coming up for round 2 for me this year.
Yeah, it's one of these things that we'll use this as an example, right? Because I think I struggle with this in different parts of my life. It's like, this is not an exclusive thing. This is like open invite. Like, if you think like Stephen Harris and Phil Crawford, where you're like, no, so much more is possible. And if you approach people with kindness and care, like, hey, come along, like on anything, like an open door, right? And I want people to know that, about me, like, hey, come on in. But I think it's really important to, just for success, to live like that, right? And I know you guys do, which is why this is such a great fit and a great match. But, I think that openness and that curiosity and that invitation has been really key to my life. And I want to make sure that is like front and center in the things that I do. And it doesn't feel like, well, this is sectioned off to these people or this corner of the world.
That is spot on and so on brand for what we're trying to do here. But I want to keep Boondoggle a mystery for just a bit longer. Because of what you were tying into so well on the mission and purpose thing and the high leverage. So with this podcast, the whole goal, what we're trying to do is relay some frameworks and best practices for folks that are really trying to define their own picture of success for themselves. And you being an individual that it exemplifies success to me, not only in your own practices of how you live your life, but you're also, again, surrounded by a lot of high performers and successful individuals that are helping you drive the growth initiatives for St. Vincent de Paul. You've also shared with me how that path, because of just the nature of nonprofit, and you kind of alluded to, your path toward St. Vincent de Paul being, a little bit unorthodox and has had some different turns and twists. Can you kind of expand a little bit on some of those challenges and how they differ from kind of the typical, some of our peers in the corporate world or the standard entrepreneurship struggles that people are going through? Can you talk about some of those examples that you've faced in the past?
Yeah, I think from a day-to-day perspective, one of the big differences is like, most people don't need me. They don't need St. Vincent de Paul. Like, right? Most people don't need our product. Whereas, what you guys do, people need what you do, right? People need financial reporting. People need HR, payroll, HRIS systems that work well, and they need customer service that functions well. Most people have no need for the hot meal. They do not have a need to give away their money, right? From a functional perspective. And so I think that's a big differentiator. Like, no one needs me and no one owes me anything. And I think what I work to do is to help people see things slightly differently, to help make what we do at St. Vincent de Paul a value proposition for the entire community, and say, hey, you may not need our services. You may not need the hot meal or the medical clinic or the dental clinic, but boy, I know what all of us do need. And it's an anchor of some kind, right? We don't want to be these rudderless ships, right? What is providing an anchor to us, for us, that helps us feel belonging? I think St. Vincent de Paul is really good at that. That makes us feel purpose, that helps us feel joy and accomplishment. And I think St. Vincent de Paul is really, really special in all of those things. Now, I'm not sure that I can say that about other products, right? I don't know. Do I get a whole lot of joy from my financial reporting system? Maybe. Maybe I do.
Easy. You haven't met some of these accountants.
I don't want to pick on any one product, but like my HRIS system doesn't make me feel belonging, right? And so, I think there's nuances that make things different between these businesses, but I think we touch a different part of people's mind, body, soul, faith for some, whatever that is. And I think that's super needed in a world that's more frayed and disconnected and adversarial than ever.
Yeah, I think what you talk about too is helping people recognize their own faith and their potential, right? So you're giving a lot of people that need St. Vincent de Paul, your product. There's opportunity everywhere, but a lot of times when they don't see that opportunity, you're giving them the ability to see that opportunity, right? And so for me as a local business owner, seeing that through action makes me want to partner with you, right? So the action that you guys take, we have a mindset in my business where it's supporting the community that supports us. And so when we work within the local communities, just as much as you are in different capacities, that, payroll's not the sexiest thing in the world, and we're not helping anybody from big life problems like you guys are, but we want to partner and align along with those similar missions. And so I think that's really neat. And it sounds like you're playing in decades, not months, right? Because this is the long game. You can hand someone a hot meal, but we're trying to get them to the next level and the next level and their perception of success. And it's most likely, out of their current situation, and not most likely, it is for sure out of their current situation. And you guys provide that shelter and that safety net for them. So Ryan, let me ask you, both yourself and St. Vincent de Paul, poverty and homelessness is a gigantic problem, right? I mean, not one person can solve that problem. Not one organization can solve it 100%. So how do you look at solving that problem, and what is St. Vincent de Paul doing in terms of strategy there to help as many people as you can?
Yeah, I think Phil mentioned something about like frameworks and systems, right? And so, I'll give you kind of a framework that we use. It's all about the person, one-to-one, right? And we think about the dignity and humanity within each person who's in front of us. Now, I'm talking about a person, and you asked me a question about homelessness, which is in Maricopa County, 9,000 persons, right?
Sheesh.
And I'm telling you, like, our business framework is the person in front of us. It's singular, right? And so I think sometimes, and it's sort of, like the Grand Canyon trek that I just did, like sometimes it's one by one by one by one. And our framework isn't about tackling the 9,000. It's about bringing dignity and compassion and caring to a single interaction. And so, I think it starts with that, but I also think it starts with, and this is where some nonprofits don't perform well. And I think we could stand up amongst the best of them and say, oh, no. We have outcomes. We track outcomes. We know our outcomes, and we know what we're aiming for. And when we get folks from the street into our shelter, on average, to get that person housed and move them all the way through the system, our medical clinic, our dental clinic, the meals, the case management, first month, last month rent, deposit, get them furniture so they can have a dignified home. On average, from homelessness to positive housed outcome, we spend maybe $20,000 to $25,000 a person. In the county, you're looking at the county spending between $35,000 and $45,000 a person just to provide these emergency day-to-day services. People are using emergency rooms as primary care. Police are being called, fires being called, and there's no positive outcome. So they're spending more, and there's no positive outcome. And I think it's because the system is wrong. They try and tackle the 9,000, right? And they're just burning money doing it. No positive outcomes and burning money. And we say, forget that system. We're gonna be with and journey with the one. And we get positive outcomes, and those people stay in their homes, and they have a St. Vincent de Paul safety net. You said it, or belonging is sort of how we build that community. And so from a system framework perspective, that's how we look at it. And that's how we can take on really, really big challenges, because we're just talking about the one.
It's a really great way to look at it, right? Because when you have the large goal, you get discouraged pretty quickly, and a lot of people are running hide. But you guys are pivoting, and you've learned the right way to do things. And I'll give you an example of how you guys are doing that from my perspective. You have these little cards, like business cards size, that gives information of, say, Vincent de Paul, where someone can reach you, get a hot meal, get a shower, get some water, whatever. And you challenged me, right? I'm one of those people that would drive up to the red light, see someone on the corner with their sign, and them asking for money. And it's always, even you mentioned it on how it went down, it can be an awkward or difficult situation. Kind of want to tuck back into your car and not look. Yeah. And so those little cards, your inspiration and suggestion to pass out cards with a bottle of water and say, hey, what's your name? Asking them what their name is something they had been asked for so long. And you know what? When I took that from you and I put that, I challenged myself and I started implementing that, I don't have any more cards now. I need to bring some this weekend. But when I started implementing that and handing a bottle of water with that card, the guy's face that I was talking to just lit up and just said, thank you. I introduced myself, asked him what his name was, and we had a quick conversation. The light turned green. I went on about my day. But you know how that made me feel? By giving in that regard, when I used to be the one that would kind of duck and hide and not want to help, for various reasons. You never know, right? Anyway, I thought that was the coolest thing, and it's a great way to look at it, and not looking at the big picture, but bringing in the right people to help with your mission and align with your mission as well, not putting it all on your back and building that community, but also breaking it down into baby steps, similar to your Grand Canyon story, as you said, taking it one step at a time and appreciating the wins along the way and not thinking that you're not successful until the very end. You're successful every single step. It's incredible.
Yeah, I love, number one, I love that you did that, because when you think about the power of those interactions, like you said it, you're like, how do you think that made me feel? Like, it makes us all feel just more human, right? And
100%.
And certainly the gentleman that you talked with, like, no one else interacted with him like that on that day, maybe that week, maybe that month. And so I just think, like, even in our regular interactions, thinking about that humanity, and, Phil mentioned it. I mean, it is sort of a core value for me, like this human curiosity. Like, who are you? Like, at your core, who are you and what do you value? And, like, how can I honor and help that? Like, that is something that is really, really important and intentional for me. And I think it's cool because I can start to see that in my kids. And it's
awesome.
Not like they're thinking about it like I am, right? Like, I have to think about it because I got all these other bad habits going on in my head. Like, they just watch and they're like, oh, I guess that's how you're supposed to be. Like, that's just how you're supposed to approach people, with this curiosity and humanity. And,
Right.
And like, we got like little tribes all around us. And so, I think it would be really, really special to kind of have that system of operating that really leads with human curiosity and how to honor and help others.
Absolutely. And I think that we've hit on a couple, the fact that we're thinking in decades and not just, weeks or months is huge when you think about the philosophy and how St. Vincent de Paul is going to continue to operate, how we as humans are going to continue to operate and look out for a community. That big long-term picture is important, but I know, Ryan, that right now we are at a pretty significant milestone in time for St. Vincent de Paul Phoenix with the project. Well, we'll call it a project with multiple projects, but what is really in process for the immediate future and breaking ground on, and I think that, whoever we're going to be able to share this message with, when we talk about the next phase of heroes, is the way I look at this for Phoenix, and the next generation that really is calling this home and is concerned about the type of community we're building for our children. What St. Vincent de Paul is working on at this given moment in the foreseeable future. Could you kind of talk about those specific plans a little bit for the audience?
Yeah, I have some friends in economic development, and they have told me, on multiple occasions, that when businesses are looking to come to Phoenix, they immediately ask about two things. What do you think those two things are? Water and homelessness. Because when they're yeah, right. And I don't know about you guys, but like, as someone who, wears the colors of every hometown team, and I grew up here, and now I'm raising my family here, like, I'm sick and tired of being ranked last in whatever poll, teacher pay or educate, whatever you're thinking. And I think we still have an opportunity, because of how young we are as a community, to really shape the soul of the city. And I think that's going to be so important for folks like you guys, how you tell stories, how you engage with community missions. And so, St. Vincent de Paul, we're tackling that second thing that people ask economic developers about. We can't do nothing about water, but, we can do something about homelessness. And we are partnering with the city, county, and state to build a new 100-person shelter. And it's going to focus on the fastest growing population of homeless folks, the elderly, right? Older adults. And when you think about who that is, that's like my dad, right? My dad's 67, fixed income. And when you're telling me like that older adults are becoming homeless, like, that's the face that pops into my mind. And we have to ask ourselves, are we okay with that? Are we okay with being a community who lets people like our parents or our uncles or our, grandmas become homeless? And like, I'm just not okay with it. And I don't think we have to do it. And I don't think it's that expensive to figure out. And I think we know what to do. We just need to have the will to do it. So one of those things that makes it easier for us to build a new 100-person shelter is we're in South Phoenix, in kind of an industrial area, and no one's going to, no one's going to say, well, I don't want a shelter next to my whatever, right? But in other parts of the valley where we need these shelters to house people like our parents and our grandparents, we're going to have the will to say, I want that here. I value making sure people have a dignified place to call home. Like, we need to have the will for that. And so I think, in addition to the buildings, in addition to expanding our campus, in addition to inviting more people to come in and engage by volunteering and giving and being part of St. Vincent de Paul's work, I think the biggest thing that we're working on is hope, right? Like, we're trying to tell people, like, 9,000 people isn't that many. When you look at other cities like LA where it's tenfold, we can figure out 9,000. Like, we've figured out how to house 99.98% of the people in this valley. Is 0.02 so beyond us? Are we not smart enough? Do we not have the will to get the 0.02? I just think that's crazy, right? And so I think for us, sharing the hope that we can do this, we know how to do this, it's not beyond us, and then sharing the idea that whatever you think about the community and however you want to help, whoever you are, St. Vincent de Paul is the common ground where people come together on ideas like humanity and dignity and compassion, So whether you need help or whether you can offer help, we're the common ground for hope. And like, that's the thing that I want people to know, because I think it's a really, really special place. And beyond that, like, we're really good at this and we know what to do one by one with the person in front of us.
Man, I couldn't agree more. And selfishly, recording this is for me and Steven to be able to look back at that.
For sure.
And
that was awesome.
Concisely say that. And I think that you might have just changed the title of the podcast. I mean, Boondoggle's still going to have to be in it, but Shaping the Soul of the City. Yeah. I'm pretty fired up with describing it that way.
You get the chills when you hear something like that. That was doing some amazing things, my man.
So it's Boondoggle Shaping the Soul of the City. That's what we've decided.
Yeah, I don't know the
how those combine, but we'll work on it this weekend. But
okay, good.
But shifting back to Boondoggle,
yeah,
give us. You're dropping a lot of fire right now, but talk to me about Boondoggle, because I had to Google it when I first got the invite somehow. I know Steven did because he looked at me cross-eyed when I invited him. But give us the genesis. And talk us through kind of how it started and what we're looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, I think it started during COVID in like early 2021. Myself and you guys know the other two guys, Jeff Strange and James Dufresne. So James has 3 kids, Jeff has 2 kids, we have 3 kids, and we're all like, oh my gosh. Do you think we're going to be locked inside our house with these kids for another year? Like, is anyone going to be alive after this? And so we just said, I just feel like we just need to get out of town. Like, let's go somewhere. Let's just hang out, just adults, and let's talk. Like, let's get to know each other better. Let's just talk about what's going on in our community. Like, what can we do about it? And it doesn't have to be anything specific, right? It's just like, what do you see? What do you think about? What do you talk about in the quiet moments of your house at night? And so then I have a lot of coffee meetings, right, for various things. And as I was sitting down with people like Phil, I'd be like, you and Paul want to come? I think you could add to this conversation. And all of a sudden, 55 people came to Palm Springs the first year, and it was and it was one of those things where I think a lot of guys who are older than us, maybe like one generation older, they just found it amusing, and they were like, seriously, you're going to travel to Palm Springs with 55 people and you think this is a good idea? And they're like, all right, well, tell me how it goes. And, you have all...
It's an eclectic group, too.
It's
ages.
Yeah.
It's diverse.
I think we're going to go probably 25 to 65 years old this year. I think
it's a great range.
That'll be the spread. And, I think for me, it comes down to putting people in more casual situations with no expectation, that we can just say, hey, we all have ideas, we all have businesses that we need to support, we all have these relationships that we can connect and intertwine and leverage, and like, why not? Like, why not talk about that? Especially among like trusted, good people who care about things like community and food drives and bringing your customer, like, why would we not pull those people together and say, all right, look, there's no topic, but just go. And so we play a little golf. I find that the best idea creation is around like 2 p.m. on Saturday, when everyone's had half a day in the pool. They might have had a soda pop or two. And, we've all spent a day together and we've gotten to know one another. And someone like Rick Dirks will say, hey, have you guys ever thought about, fill in the blank? And Stephen Harris is a part of the conversation. And he says, well, I actually have a client who does that. Like we could probably get them involved, and then all of a sudden I get pulled over and they're like, hey Ryan, we have an idea. Why don't we do it? And I'm like, yeah, great, fantastic. But also, did you know, Stephen, your client needs to store stuff in Rick Dirks' warehouse, and so it just becomes this web of like, oh, I think we can all help support one another, and it's and when good people are put together, like that's what it becomes about. It becomes about supporting one another and not getting business. And I think that's just a really cool mix. So I don't know if you have like specific things you want me to talk about with that.
No, I think, like per usual, this is one of your, for me, speaking for the Boondoggle crew as well as some of the Vinny's advisory board, it's you making it casual and being humble about it. But when you see it from the outside, all of us there's this underlying drive to want to contribute and problem solve, but oftentimes the feeling isn't, you're not able to respond to one email or speak up at one specific meeting and make it happen, but you create these environments, whether it's Boondoggle, which is obviously a very relaxed environment and a vacation, or the advisory board meetings where everyone gets to really marinate with the problem at hand, or not the problem at hand. We may be talking about a completely different problem for that specific time, but then all of a sudden something clicks and you almost feel it from somebody else, the answer to the problem. It's pretty special to watch, but to be able to curate a space for that to happen is a gift in its own, and you're onto something pretty special. It's that mastermind effect, right? Like that where you're able to drive in one, in this case, resort property. I don't know if Stephen, that's been your, being last year being your first one. Not sure if that's what you've gathered as well.
Yeah, last year was my first one. My wife and I made it out. I sliced a handful of, well, we'll say a handful, more like 20 balls on a round of 18 to the right. But the golf is the fun part. It's the socialization that you put together, and you kind of put 55 like-minded people in a spot together. That happens to be the pool at some resort that, you'd probably draw out of a hat somewhere, but it's a blast. And it goes back to how we started this pod, is your ability to connect people and doing it in a way that doesn't make it feel forced. You make it fun. You align with whatever my perception of success or happiness or my vision with whoever else's success or happiness or vision is, and you align that and you can see it in a really great way. And so Boondoggle, as fun as the name is and as fun as the weekend is, there's a lot of great collaboration. I've met friends just in the 1 year, friends that came out of that weekend, even, like Davenport. I'd already known him, and I was like, Davenport, he just shows up, right? And so there's a lot of synergies already there, and that was what was really neat. We had a blast. We were excited for this week, and I thank you for continuing to invite me, even though my golf game, I can get under the hundreds. I can do all right. So, but it's a blast.
You're player number 2 in your twosome, like that it's Kim's golf game that we
You're the plus one.
Well,
yeah.
Well, here's the deal with Kim. She hits it straight every freaking time, but when we get on the green, keep this between us. She has about a 25-foot gimme radius. She's not the biggest, most fun putter. She doesn't enjoy it too much. But all jokes aside, we play it right, and we actually have a fun time with it. I do have to ask you, though, Ryan, you're, as we mentioned, great at connecting people and aligning our own perceptions of success and helping us achieve that. How do you define success? Not St. Vincent de Paul, talking about you personally at this point. How do you define that, and are you aligned with that in what you're currently doing?
I talk about this with my wife more than I talk about it with anyone else, but I don't, there's not a whole lot of things that I have to get right in life. There's just not, right? Like for me, I've raised Catholic, still Catholic. And so for me, I have to get right living a life of faith. I have to get right being a good husband to Rachel, and I have to get right setting a good example for my kids. And really, that's it. Like, those are the only things that I need to get right in life to feel like I'm successful. I think a lot of other things I enjoy doing, I think are important, I think are part of my calling and my core, like my work. And I think that's all really important. But like, part of the deal with the work that I do, I'm making the choice to be there. Yeah, calling, yeah, because it's important, but most nights I'm home for dinner, right? And I think that's part of being a good husband to Rachel and being a good dad to my kids. And I don't have to travel very much, and that's something that's important. You know, Rachel and I talked about that. That's a lot of travel wasn't her favorite thing. We get to be in Arizona. That's something that was, I think, important to both of us as our kids have grandparents here. So all of those other things really do have to fit and be in alignment with the three things that I get that I have to get right in life. And to your absolutely brutal question of, am I living all of that in perfect alignment? Absolutely not. And thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome. It's the
but
path.
I think
it's the path.
It is, and sometimes, like, just keep walking the path, just keep going up the canyon, right? Like, it is hard. It's hard, and you're gonna need to stop and rest, and you're probably gonna have a, expletive laden tirade against the canyon or whatever issue you're walking up against. But like, you're right, it's the path. Like, keep going.
Well, you just gotta,
I love
remember.
it. That's the perfect summary.
Yeah, don't be mean to yourself, right? You have to appreciate the little wins and staying on the path of the direction that you're going. And from my perspective, and I think I can speak on behalf of Phil, you're on that path and you're far more successful than you may think of yourself so far, right? And that's, I think, what's most important is how you're perceived is oftentimes in life far greater than how we perceive ourselves. And you're an incredible person. I'm blessed to know you.
Yeah, man.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the work that you're doing, and the especially at your age. I mean, the three of us, we're no spring chickens anymore, but we have some good years left in us. And I just look at the work that you're doing. Again, not just the network, but how you approach everything and the complexities of what you're dealing with day in and day out, public and private sector. It's just, I know it's got to be rewarding, but the effort involved is up there too. So just couldn't be. I'm just so completely proud of you, and so blessed to have you on the podcast. I just realized I am outnumbered on this podcast on the team breakup for Boondoggle, and though this podcast is not sponsored, we did all show up with the right gear on to tee off this trip. Are there any bold predictions, since you guys are both the enemy? Any big predictions for Coronado and Boondoggle 23? I'll start with you, Stephen.
All right, so my prediction, hands down, Team Davenport gets the win, and it's because of Corry's ace on hole number 7. And the last prediction, when that happens, and I hear him screaming from hole 15, is me running shirtless down the fairway. There you go.
We are going to pray for that for multiple reasons.
I like that.
On the outcome there. How about you, Sir Corry? What's going down at Coronado Boondoggle 23?
I think we're going to see, I'm going to take the over on the bet of 1.5 tracksuits from Alexander Falkenstein. He shows up in a tracksuit every year. I think it's going to be 2 this year. I don't think it's going to be me getting the ace. I think it's going to be someone from the Leon Dane, Jeff Rothenberg, Jim Dunning group. And I think someone may fall asleep on the golf course. They may have to stay there. They may not make
that golf cart might not be returned in one piece. In that group.
Yeah, that's I think, you know what? I'm gonna go Taryn Schaefer. I think Taryn Schaefer gets it. And if it's not an ace, he definitely wins closest to the pin. I think he's gonna pull one out of nowhere.
And there it is. That's our bold predictions. I'm just going to say thank you one last time for joining us, Ryan. First guest. This is not going to be your last time on this podcast. I know that for sure. So keep that in mind running this back. Where can everybody find you and find what we'll link this in the show notes and everything, but also if they're eager to check out how to contribute to St. Vincent de Paul, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, best spot is svdpaz.org, like stvincentdepaul.org. And to find me, I guess I find a lot of people via Twitter, and I'm not super active, but I think it's one of those really interesting, fun ways to learn and connect. So who am I? I'm RC SVDP. That's it. And so that's where people can find all of my random ponderings, prior to Boondoggle.
That's perfect. Well, that's a wrap for the Success Flow podcast. Please like or subscribe and keep tuning in. Reach out to us if there's anything that you would like to hear specifically at successflowpod@gmail.com, our super official email for now. Reach out to Steven and I and let us know how we can help you live a successful life of flow. Thanks, everybody.